welcome to SIM-PAC Live. I'm your host, Geoff Matthews. The last thing I expected to be thinking about over the New Year holiday was Venezuelan oil. Yet here we are, on the 11th of January, with the talking heads, traders and oil executives suddenly debating Donald Trump's obsession with Venezuela's oil reserves. And I don't want to get too much into the politics. I want to talk about why the energy transition itself has already made this a fantasy. Across all the commentary, almost no one is talking about the one force that now dominates the future of energy, the energy transition. So let's lay the facts out on the table. On the oil side, demand growth is slowing to a crawl. Global oil demand grew by less than 1% in 2024. An oil share of the total global energy fell below 30% for the first time in modern energy era. In advanced economies, oil demand is flat or sliding, with road transport the single biggest source of oil consumption peaking in 2023. It's now in decline in those developed nations. Way to go, EVs. Almost all the remaining demand growth is now forecast to come from developing countries. This carries real risks for oil investors, however. These markets are easily disrupted and lack a century of sunk investment in petrol stations, diesel fleets and oil-fired industry. In India, electric two-wheelers, rooftop solar and battery-backed grids are spreading faster than petrol infrastructure ever did. Solar, batteries and electric mobility slip straight into gaps where oil never had time to lock itself in. Now let's look at the other side of the ledger. Renewables accounted for 92.5% of all new global power capacity in 2024. Nearly 600 gigawatts of solar was added in a single year. 2025 will surely have shattered this record, with the first quarter results alone in 2025 showing an additional 380 gigawatts. Battery prices have fallen about 96% since 2016, and electric vehicles make up now more than 20% of the global new car sales. In China, and this is critical, the figure is closer to 50%. Against that backdrop, the economics of recovered Venezuelan oil production will never ever stack up. Never ever? Never ever. Venezuela produces extra heavy, high sulfur crude. It costs more to extract, it costs more to transport, it costs more to refine. It sells at a discount because refiners need to be compensated for the complexity and the waste streams that come with it. That oil yields mostly diesel and heavy fuels. Markets already losing momentum as transport, freight, heating and industry electrify. China buys most of Venezuela's exports today. China's total crude imports fell in 2024. Electric vehicles, rail and grid-scale renewables are reshaping its fuel demand faster than any country on earth. And the United States is no different. Around 70% of US refineries can technically handle heavy crude. The market for those barrels is not growing. Transport fuel demand has plateaued. Domestic shale supplies plenty of lighter oil that is easier and cheaper to process. Analysts estimate that merely stabilising Venezuela's production would cost tens of billions of dollars. Returning output anywhere near its past peaks would take a decade of continuous investment. We know what 10 years of oil infrastructure looks like. Pipelines, refineries and ports in 2035 will look very much like they did in the 1930s. Just newer, more expensive and more regulated. 10 years of future electric mobility and clean energy will look nothing like we've ever seen before. Batteries will be cheaper, vehicles will be smarter, grids will be more flexible, energy will be more digital, distributed and abundant. That is the real bet on the table. One path pours capital into fading industrial hardware. The other rides the fastest technological development curve the energy sector has ever seen. Two last points here. Trump is fixated on prices at the pump. We know affordability is a priority for many Americans, but by the way, you're not alone. We have the same issues here in New Zealand and Australia, so we feel for you. But even if Venezuelan oil were allowed back into the US market, it would not magically make fuel cheaper. Venezuelan crude is extra heavy and expensive to process, so any headline discount is eaten up inside the refinery. And whatever price release did appear at the pump would come straight out of the pockets of US taxpayers and US shell producers. Trump has also said he wants control of Venezuelan crude and to sell it to whoever he chooses. But here's the inconvenient truth. No one actually needs it. Venezuela today produces less than 1% of global oil supply. It's down from about over 3 million barrels per day 2 decades ago. And it's barely a fraction of the world flows. Even if Venezuelan heavy crude vanished entirely from the market, the world would barely notice. Global oil markets are well supplied, and heavy sour barrels already trade at deep discounts because the refiners have alternative sources from Canada, the Middle East and elsewhere. In a market where diesel demand is weakening and heavy oil is in surplus, Venezuelan crude isn't strategic, it's marginal. Even after the events of the last few weeks, the markets haven't moved. That's why Trump's Venezuelan oil dreams don't just collide with politics, they collide with physics, economics, time and history. So where does that leave us? Well, to a president and an administration that's failed to even want to understand the future of energy, controlling heavy, expensive crude oil is not what it's cracked up to be, or what it was once. Electricity is becoming the cheapest form of energy humans have ever had. And once energy becomes cheap, flexible and clean, oil loses its monopoly on electricity, motion, heat, and most importantly, political might and power. They don't call it the renewables revolution for nothing.